Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Got a little treat for y'all tonight. Just be patient. As this Blog Talk Radio slows my computer down very, very badly. As it's loading there, though, I'll go ahead and talk for just a moment. So how y'all been doing? I ain't been doing much good, but you know, I've been trying to catch up on the rest as usual. That's about it.
Oh, say can you see?
I wanted to start tonight off with the national anthem to boost morale among us patriots and everybody, you know, worldwide, even well, I mean countrywide, but even worldwide.
By the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes.
Come on, Ariana, put it out, baby. I know you can do it. Or damn Google or somebody. Come on now. You holding up progress. I tell y'all what, I'm see anybody on their knee? See anybody on their knee during this pregame?
Were so gallantly streaming, and rockets aloud, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through that night that our flag was still there. Oh, say yes, that star-spangled banner wave for the land of the free and the heart of the
Shelton Boyd, time to take those earplugs out. It's all yours.
pretty good. She done a pretty good job right there. She did. By the way, those of you listening on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, or Blog Talk, or I don't know what I might be on, SoundCloud, maybe even iTunes. You can go over to alexmorganshow.com and watch a live streaming version of the show. The number to call tonight, after the difficulty that I experienced the other night, I want everybody to start calling 276-524-0047. We'll start using that number again for a while. Although the Blog Talk Radio number is still available. We can try it, I guess, if you would rather call that number. That number 323-693-3320. Again, those numbers 276-524-0047 or 323-693-3320. But yeah, I was so discouraged after the other night. I'm not gonna point any fingers at anybody but myself, because it was nobody's fault but my own. I don't know, there wasn't nothing worked. My phone, or my camera, it died. My, one of my streams went down, besides the live video one, I forget which. But yeah, it was just a mess. It was one big mess. And I apologize from the very bottom of my heart. I work really hard to put on this little show, and just tonight I've been about 2 hours doing research and just look at all this news. Hold on a minute, let me dim down the light here if you can see any better. All these blue things are links. I can't scroll with that on though. Hold on. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus 12 more. I've got about 21 links to share with y'all tonight. And some of those are actually from the other night, which I didn't get to share. But like I said, I do promise to do a whole lot better job over here. When I fail, it's my fault, nobody else's. I'm not pointing any fingers here or nothing like that, but this is a desperate time that we're going through, folks, and we really need to get down on our hands and knees and pray to God for forgiveness, pray to God to guide us through this battle that we're going through during this terrible time of dividedness in our country and in our world. We live in a country that's founded on different beliefs, different religions, different races of people. We are a country of immigrants. I believe that strongly, folks, but now I'm going to tell y'all something. I believe that people should be able to come to our country, you know, in droves even. If you know, they can meet the immigration laws and requirements and all that. we got a big country. I mean, it's no small country like, say, Italy or Spain or any of those, countries. And we've got a big population too, but I mean, we're the greatest country on earth, supposedly. It's what everybody keeps telling me anyway, So, I definitely believe that people should definitely have the opportunity to come here. If that's what they want to do, and they can pass all the immigration requirements. There's been countless people that's died at the hands of illegal immigrants, folks, and too many to really count, probably, for all I know. But did y'all hear about this hailstorm in Texas? HELL, or so it says on Drudge. Hurricane Harvey landfall at Category 2. Supposed to be a Category 3, I think. Up to 30 inches of rain in Texas. Can you believe it? Meanwhile, the storm's threatening the Gulf Coast also. There's been troops deployed. Major stress test for president. I've never seen this yet. Let's check this out and see what it says here. Hurricane Harvey presents major stress test for Trump administration. Hurricane Harvey, which is expected to develop into a, quote, major hurricane, end quote, by the time it makes landfall on Friday, will be a major stress test for the Trump White House. The hurricane will present a new challenge for the Trump administration, which to date has only dealt the political crisis and not natural disasters. In a rare pair of tweets Thursday morning, influential news aggregator Matt Drudge said that the incoming hurricane will present a serious challenge for the Trump administration. Drudge noted in one tweet that Harvey signals, quote, it's about time to get real, end quote, for Trump. Here's his tweet. Trump facing first serious crisis with Hurricane Harvey. 130 mile per hour winds. Texas coast. 25 inches of rain in Houston. It's about to get real. Quote, Texas coast big winds, slow-moving landfall, biblical rains to urban Houston, giant test for Trump administration and new government efficiency, end quote. Drudge added in a follow-up asking, quote, is he ready, end quote. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Thursday that President Trump has been receiving briefings on the hurricane's developments and, quote, stands ready to provide resources as needed, end quote. Trump later tweeted out a video showing him meeting with Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA officials, and encouraged Americans in the hurricane's path to plan ahead. A forecast from the National Hurricane Center released Thursday morning, quote, calls for Harvey to reach major hurricane strength by 36 hours before it reaches the middle Texas coast, end quote. If, as expected, Harvey grows into a Category 3 hurricane, it will be the first hurricane of that size to make landfall in the U.S. since 2005. But I really don't have a lot of news on this hurricane. We'll gather up some though. Trying to play this video for y'all now. Should have knew I would have had trouble with it. But I do believe that this is going to be a big test for the Trump administration. I mean, you have to expect a lot from Trump, especially after his criticism of Obama. After the hurricane that hit New York, after he talked about how terrible that hurricanes, was Sandy the one that hit New York, right? And yeah, Hurricane Katrina was the one that hit New Orleans. He also, he criticized Bush about that. W. Bush, that is. But you saw where Obama was at. I think he was on vacation during the time, maybe even playing golf. It was one of the two. I think he was on vacation, though, the best I can remember. So, I'm sorry. I apologize for the clicking. Nervous habits, but yeah, I'm waiting on this video here to load. It said, remember, with Hurricane Harvey approaching, the U.S. is the most resilient nation on Earth because we plan ahead. preparedness is an investment in our future. President Donald J. Trump. I thought that was going to be like a news video about this hurricane. Let's go back to the Weather Channel's website here at weather.com and see exactly what they're saying about Hurricane Harvey. Again, I apologize for my slow computer, as I do need equipment, folks. I need equipment bad. I'll admit it. If you have any old equipment that you would be interested in getting rid of or donating or anything like that, you can email me. The Alex Morgan Show at gmail.com, Alex at alexmorganshow.com. The easiest way to donate is to go to alexmorganshow.com and go down towards the bottom of the page. You'll see a PayPal link and you should see a GoFundMe link. Or you can go to GoFundMe.com/AlexMorganShow. Or you can send me a check directly if you would rather do that. Send that to 28135 Highway 421, Hyden, Hyden, Kentucky 41749. But it would be amazing what I could do if I just had the means, the resources, the funds, all that good stuff. I'm here to fight for y'all folks. I really am. I truly, truly, truly want to fight for you. Wait while this other damn page right here loads. But yeah, folks, I'm not the kind of person to ask for handouts or donations or to even bomb for that matter. But this is desperate times, and I feel that it's crucial that we stick together, especially in these times of divide. Again, I want to be clear. In no way do I advocate for any type of violence towards anyone or any living thing on this earth. I just as bad as I hate to, I think I'm going to play a video from CNN here. It really bores me to death sitting and waiting. I know it does you too, folks. No, I apologize. Hey, I've got some big news, though, concerning President Trump and the Trump administration. I've got some really big predictions being made by an ex-member of the Trump campaign. I'll have to play that video for y'all. Can y'all see this hurricane right here? It's really huge. Right here's the eye. Highways in Texas filled with cars Thursday into the night as coastal residents made their way north and out of the path of a hurricane that forecasters say will bring, quote, life-threatening, unquote, amounts of rain. Should areas get as many as 35 inches of rain from Hurricane Harvey, and many will get more than a foot. Forecasters from the National Hurricane Center said Harvey has strengthened to a Category 2 storm with maximum sustained winds of 100 miles per hour, according to the National Weather Service. As Harvey gained strength Thursday, residents along the Texas coast made the choice to evacuate or stay. Those staying in place aren't taking any chances. They're filled with sandbags, stocking up on water, and boarding up windows. Harvey is rapidly becoming more powerful and is forecast to become a Category 3 hurricane with winds of at least 111 miles an hour by the time it hits the middle Texas coast late Friday or early Saturday. The Hurricane Center said Thursday, after hitting Corpus Christi, the storm is expected to stall over the state, forecasters say. in Corpus Christi, where Harvey could make landfall, and Mayor Joe McComb has issued a voluntary evacuation order. Walmart shelves were clearing quickly as the city canceled Friday's
Tropical systems
dockets.
come in all shapes and sizes. You have tropical depressions, tropical storms, and once it is strong enough to...
I'm sorry. Walmart in Corpus Christi, where Harvey could make landfall, and Mayor Joe McComb has issued a voluntary evacuation order. Walmart shelves were clearing quickly as the city canceled Friday's dockets in city court and provided self-serve sandbags to residents. Florida force winds are a concern as the storm builds strength in north of Mexico, and a potential deluge and subsequent flooding may be a quick danger as well, according to meteorologists. Northbound 37 out of Corpus Christi was filled as people evacuated. The highway, which goes to San Antonio, was backed up for miles while the southbound lanes were mostly empty. A photo from Mary C. Rivera shows. Now we'll watch this little video here.
Tropical systems come in all shapes and sizes. You have tropical depressions, tropical storms, and once it is strong enough to become a hurricane, you have 5 categories. So category 5 being the strongest. The states most frequently hit by a hurricane: Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. But as much as we know about hurricanes, forecasting them is still a challenge. Just as we name each storm has a... its own personality. Like Katrina in 2005, which intensified rapidly overnight, going from a category 3 to a category 5. It became the...
You'd think it would be loaded by now. I said turn and read almost that whole article to y'all. You know, the main important parts anyway, I believe.
fourth most intense hurricane on record as of that time. And the forecast track can change dramatically, like Erica in 2015, or a system that can be... a system that can be... is still a challenge. Just as we name each storm has its own personality. Like Katrina in 2005, which intensified rapidly overnight, going from a category 3 to a category 5. It became the fourth most intense hurricane on record as of that time. And the forecast track can change dramatically, like Erica in 2015. Or a system that can be viewed as relatively weak, like a tropical storm, could end up like Tropical Storm Allison in 2001. The remnants of the storm stalled over southeast Texas.
Excuse me. Well, I'm gonna move it on. I can't sit here and wait on this all night. And I know y'all can't neither. Our time is valuable, so I'm sure y'all gotta get up and go to work in the morning and all kinds of good stuff like that. So I'm not gonna hold y'all up any more than I have to. Trying to find a link, but I am just not seeing it. So I'm going to go find the link or the video. Just give me just a second here. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. This is it. Give it just a second here to load. I'm not going to waste y'all's time either. Listening to Alex Jones and his craziness at times. Which only about, I don't know, 10 to 15% of what he says isn't, much to take serious, I would think, but the rest that he does says, yeah, you better listen to.
Answer off now and set your daughter up with an entrepreneurial business or something, and to teach her how to own a lawnmower company, or a pool company, or a restaurant, or to go write a book. 90% of the degrees are worthless. It's all a joke. You need to pull out of their system completely. Because there's no future if we don't. They're not going to coexist. They're not liberal. They're not tolerant. They're the opposite of Martin Luther King. They have scientifically been induced to go insane.
I can't help but get tickled at him, though. I'm sorry.
Now, let's look at DrudgeReport.com today. We also have these stories up on NewsWars.com. USA Today, page 1. Debating Trump mental health becomes cottage industry. Why Dems can't capitalize on president's blunders. Trump taps Hulk as fitness guru. Now, when you read through all this, I have a whole bunch of these videos where they say
Trump taps Hulk as fitness guru. Yeah. Right here, USA Today, page 1. Debating Trump mental health becoming cottage industry.
Trump has early onset of dementia. Trump is mentally ill. Trump needs to be removed from office. We need to implement the 25th Amendment on and on and on and on and on. Now, why is that important? Because we broke back in May of this year in studio, but also on the streets of Austin, doing a live feed, while Democrats drove by and said, F you, in close to darkness on the side of downtown. This is very cinematic. For some reason, those videos get 3 times as many views. So we like to shoot stuff on the street at night. Roger Stone says, I've just gotten intel. And I don't know how much of this I can tell you of where he got the source, but he talks to people at major newspapers that are in editorial meetings, and they're in the meetings going, we don't think the Russian narrative is ever going to work. It's going to play out. Our focus group show nobody buys into it, 6-7%. But maybe we can get something criminal as part of the investigation, finding something somebody did wrong. That's why they've expanded the dragnet to all his customers, his renters, his businesses, his pure harassment. And there's the Austin American Statesman that memorialized the fact that Roger Stone broke it. Roger Stone and Alex Jones warn of Alzheimer's claim to remove Trump. Jonathan Tillove, and the date is May 16th, 2017. So, again, why do they call us fake news? We told you pardon was coming for Arpaio first. You know, here it's going to happen. Time Magazine pulls their hair out, says, oh my God, Alex Jones and Matt Drudge and Jerome Corsi got the, and Roger Stone got the information to Trump. Yes, it was gotten personally to Trump face to face. It was gotten to Trump over a telephone call. And it was then reinforced when he then saw it 2 days later on Drudge. And I'm going to leave it at that. Yes, the president is actually paying attention and learned that Arpaio, without a jury trial, was given at least 6 months in prison, maybe longer. But again, why do they call us fake news? Because I told you 20 years ago, the Scientific Atlantic cable boxes had microphones listening to you, putting it into keyword aggregate software to then data mine the information, create an algorithm of your personality and sell the data. And the Time Warner Cable was involved. I was told that by one of their top engineers. Now, 20 years later, I think I can say a little bit more about the source, was an engineer in Time Warner. The guy drove a $300,000 black Bentley. I looked up who he was. It was true. He gave me the intel. Showed me the schematics, everything. But I'm digressing. Then I had other whistleblowers come to me, former NSA, some of them public, who'd been in the NSA and exposed how it all worked. And I told you in 2005 and 2004 that Google was watching and listening to you over new smartphones, laptops, and your little web cameras. And then exactly word for word what Paul Watson wrote and what I said was later announced yesterday. Now, how did we get it exactly right? Because there was a specific press release to stockholders that listeners sent us. It wasn't public, but it wasn't secret. It was to stockholders of Google that they're pioneering, listening to everyone in their houses over microphones and watching them, to then, if your dog's barking was the innocuous example, to make it sound okay to stockholders. Oh, you're going to make money. First get the money class into it. We're watching and listening, but it's okay, you're going to make money. Like if a dog barks, we'll know to put dog food ads up on the computer. It's like Count Dracula comes over and says, mind if I come in your house whenever I want? Like if I see a window open, mind if I crawl up on your roof and close it just to be friendly? By the way, your neck looks quite delicious this evening. If I ever see your house on fire, mind if I have permission to come in? Oh, if you ever see my house on fire, come on in. They're like, oh, thank you for that. Hey, we just want to know if you've got a dog. Are listening to you. It's a little puppy dog. Look, same way see, they're psychopaths. Same way a creeper in a van, I have a puppy. Same way, oh, we just want to know if they have a dog. We're listening to them. We're going to have dog food ads. It's all very innocuous. And, of course, they will give you dog food ads. That is part of it. Part of the entire billions of things they're going to know about you to track your whole life with AI computers watching you. Maybe guardian angels don't exist in the real world spiritually. Maybe they don't. I know they do. The point is, these little babies, that's how I left it's not my phone, it's a smartphone, little tracker, little digital goblin that watches and listens and tracks everything I do. It's a little guardian devil. Yes, smartphones and smart meters and all this tech in your house, they admit's watching, listening to you. And hooked into the smart meter the city put on. It just so happens to scan all those frequencies and grab those and sell them. And there's a whole boom rush on that too. So Roger Stone talks to 30, 40, 50 reporters a day. It's almost OCD. I mean, every time I'm at dinner with him or he's here at the office, he works with InfoWars now. He's signed on. Got a contract with him. He just is on the phone with every reporter you can imagine. And he said, I have now talked to 2 different people that were in major editorial board meetings. And they said, first we're going to play out the Russian narrative. Then we're going to say he's racist, which you now notice months later they're doing. And then we're going to say he's got Alzheimer's and dementia and is mentally ill. And they said, we believe that's what we can get the Republican establishment to go with. And then have some bill they're going to pass to embarrass him. And I'm like, really? Yeah. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, and I recommend you start talking to the New York Times, with him, I guess, after. And Tilla wrote a big article about how we claim the next move is Alzheimer's. No, we didn't claim that. That's what they have in the hopper. Just like I told you over and over and over and over again, they're planning a COG overthrow of the president and planning a civil war and planning the CIA to kill him. And that right before they do it, they're going to start announcing it on the news to normalize it so that when it actually happens, so that when it actually goes down, everyone is normalized and thinks it's cool. And now I have stacks of news here where they say, get out on the street, ask people where they stand. That's just normal people everywhere who are blonde-haired, blue-eyed, or have short haircuts are being stabbed, are being shot. Republican members of the legislatures, of governor's offices, of city neighbor. Oh, that's the Republican city council member. Really? In there watching CNN, in there watching MSNBC, walks over, shoots him twice in the head. And why not? CNN said, the headline's out today, all Trump voters are white supremacists by default. And you're like, call me a white supremacist. It's not true. You don't understand. They're saying, we're going to kill you. We're running a Mao operation. I told you last year, and I told you over and over again, I've been to these rallies all over the country. It's Mao Red Guard college students. And they drive Jaguars and Mercedes, and their parents work for Time Warner and CNN. And they believe, they know they're devil worshipers. They know communism's all fake. They want to get a red takeover. They're going to be like communist generals, folks, running it. We're bringing Roger Stone on here in a minute, but here he is in May telling you from his sources what the next fake rollout will be. Then after that, he will tell you today what the next rollout will be after that. InfoWars, learn it years, months, or days before it's admitted officially. The opposite of fake news. The sterling, white-hot fount of dedicated truth. Let's go to the Roger Stone clip from May 16th.
First, a disclaimer right up front. They're going to say that this is a conspiracy theory, but it's the stone cold truth. They are going to claim that Donald Trump has Alzheimer's, and that it is progressive, and that is progressing, and that is the source of his insanity. I've talked to the president fairly recently. He is sharp as a tack. There is no evidence of any deterioration in his thought process. This is completely bogus. But under the 25th Amendment, if a majority of the cabinet plus the vice president agree that the president is incapacitated, well, then he is removed. And if he seeks to fight the charges, it goes to the U.S. House of Representatives, where erosion among Republicans could destroy the Trump presidency. This is bogus. They could not beat him at the ballot box. So now they seek to remove him by claiming that he's insane. Look at his record on the economy. Look at his appointment to the Supreme Court. Look at the way he has the Chinese doing our dirty work in North Korea, and you will see he's not crazy. He's a genius.
I was about to say, if that's insane, we need more of it.
But this is the game plan. Watch carefully. You're going to see the word Alzheimer's more and more in the next several days. I've even been tipped off from leftists about this, that this is the game plan. You heard it first at Infowars.com.
That's right. Now it's all admitted. Roger Stone joins us right now. He's out in Los Angeles where they're looking at an Oscar for the Get Me Roger Stone. A lot of powerful stuff going on. I guess for Best Documentary of 2018 coming up. Roger, just hellstorm of stuff going on. We've got to go to break here in just a moment. But up front here, you didn't make the prediction because I kind of gave away some of the inside baseball. You told me you talked to some people, some high-level editorial boards where they were admitting what the next rollout of fraud would be.
You're absolutely right, Alex. Here we have it. I predicted it right here on InfoWars that they would accuse the president of having senile dementia, that they would say that he was mentally unbalanced. This is the direct manifestation of the fact that the whole Russian gambit has failed. So they shifted from Russia to race, where they have been race baiting, where the president clearly denounces violence on the left or the right over racial matters. They're not satisfied with that. So now they're trying to say that he's crazy. CNN is particularly out of control here, Alex. And the extraordinary thing is, and I think I can break this right now, Jeff Zucker is not long for this world at CNN. I am told that the executives at the highest levels of AT&T, who are in the process of acquiring Time Warner, which owns CNN, are very dissatisfied with Zucker's performance at CNN.
I am too.
And that he will be shown the door fairly shortly.
Well, if CNN wanted 10 million viewers a night again, they would bring back Larry King, and they put you on, they put me on. But we don't need their platform. They're a joke. They can't, though. They can't give people what they want. Imagine a crossfire with Roger Stone, Alex Jones, and then a couple of the idiot Democrats. No one could look away. It'd have 10 million viewers first week, but it's not going to happen.
Well, and what happened last night was quite extraordinary. Ed Martin, who has appeared here at InfoWars a number of times, an outstanding conservative activist who really ran the Trump campaign in Missouri, was up against 5 critics. And when he had the audacity to come back at the brainless Ana Navarro, well, all heaven broke loose. Anderson Cooper's supposed to be a moderator, but it was 5-on-1. Today, CNN flew Martin to New York, put him up in a very pricey hotel, and then canceled him when Ana Navarro went crying to management that he had the audacity to actually call her out on the air. This woman is unhinged. She really is.
And she's the same person putting out the talking point that they issue these talking points. And that the president has dementia. Does that have legs? And then what's the next, if you've talked to a lot of folks on the editorial boards of big papers, what's the next thing they're being told to get ready to make up?
Well, the president is both mentally and physically sound. It's Ana Navarro, who was fired by the Jeb Bush administration for lying about being an attorney and got caught. So who is she to talk about anybody? It's very clear that the predictions that you made, Alex, earlier about are heading towards absolute anarchy in an attempt to take the president out on the streets. In other words, we're going to have violent demonstrations and violence, which we saw in Charlottesville, which we're seeing at the hands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa.
And we're seeing CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post say when violence is for peace, 1984, literally quoted on CNN, Washington Post, have had headlines last 2 days, when violence defends peace, and they're saying, we're going to attack you, and CNN is legitimizing it, and they're having moderators on, and people saying, hashtag hunt Republicans, and then they've got the nerve to say that we're the ones calling for a violent revolution. No, we just kicked your butts intellectually with a political revolution, and we've turned the economy back on and righted the ship, and you crazy gremlins are crapping your little britches.
Well, that's exactly right. What this is really about, Alex, is the last election. They can't get over it. They will not accept the results of a fair democratic election. And therefore, they seek to remove Donald Trump by any means necessary. They tried the Electoral College. They tried the recount. They tried the Russia collusion delusion. These things have all failed. Now they're moving on to claiming that he's mentally unbalanced, that he has dementia. That won't work either. The last stop on this subway is violence. That's where they're headed. When I predicted violence, of course, those on the left say, oh, Stone is advocating violence. No, I don't advocate violence. But I do not think it's 1974. I do not think you're going to have a coup in this country and that patriotic Americans are going to sit there and stand for it. They're going to see it for what it is, an illegitimate, undemocratic, unconstitutional power grab.
I love how they lit me from below and everything with NBC, Megyn Kelly. With you, the video still they used is like the most unflattering thing. I mean, it's so transparent.
Yeah, that's quite a picture of me that they have there. I'm far more handsome than that. This is typical of the left. Look at the photo that Politico used the other day in covering the fact that I have been speaking at these pro-marijuana states' rights conferences, which my speeches have been very well received, but a small hand of agitators ginned up by David Brock and the people at Media Matters for America have staged a boycott. Of 75 speakers expected in L.A., 3 people dropped. Good riddance.
That's right. They're pushing a no platforming for you, which means the end of free speech, which, again, I have a stack of news here and a stack of clips where CNN, MSNBC, they're all saying it's time to end free speech. They're saying free speech is white supremacist. They even had the ACLU apologize and remove an image of a white child because they said that was white supremacist because the ACLU said, yes, the dumb white supremacists have a right to march. So now the left is openly saying the ACLU are Nazis, and the ACLU has apologized for showing a white baby in amongst other photos of children.
Yeah, it's Kafkaesque. I mean, it really is Alice in Wonderland time in America. The left has gone completely insane over the fact that we have 1 million new jobs, that the stock market is reaching record levels, and in middle America, let me assure you, people are very pleased with the performance of Donald Trump. Now what the president must do is take the fight to the Congress, attack the Democrats and the Republicans.
Yes, they're always trying to intimidate him, saying he won't be liked if he doesn't roll over and he needs to stop tweeting and stop fighting. No, he needs to keep fighting. We're going to come back to 15 more minutes with Roger Stone. Then we've got Anthony Sabato Jr. running for Congress joining us, John Rappaport, and more. Wow. We've got so much to get into here today, but just briefly, ladies and gentlemen, you make this broadcast in that big month and a half. The amazing stars out of 5 financially support it. The Defenders.
In ancient times.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the whole ACLU tweet here in a minute. Here we're gonna get into this article from conservativefighters.com. Report PC liberals target Dolly Parton, claiming that she's a racist. You know. We're going to talk about Mayor de Blasio. Yeah. But, here you have Mitch McConnell. Mitch the bitch, ever what you want to call him. He is the bitch of the deep state, the bitch of the Republican establishment. He is their toy. That's all you can say. Folks, I got an email from him myself after writing him an extensive letter telling him how crazy this whole Russia narrative is, and telling him that Seth Rich was the leaker of the DNC emails. And he arrogantly writes me an email back telling me that Trump was definitely involved with the Russians, and this was a matter of national security and all this bull, man. Hey, let me tell you something. I'm not voting for Mitch McConnell. I will vote for a damn Democrat over Mitch McConnell. You hear me? I won't vote if it comes to me voting for Mitch McConnell. You hear me? I am not. I hope there's somebody that runs against him that's a patriot. If it didn't cost so much to run, I would run my damn self just to take votes from him. That's how bad I hate him. But anyways, what time this article right here is loading. Again, if you want to call the show tonight, 276-524-0047. The other number, 323-693-3320. Those numbers again, 276-57... Start over. 276-524-0047. 323-693-3320. McConnell in private doubts if Trump can save presidency. The relationship between President Trump and Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, has disintegrated to the point that they have not spoken to each other in weeks. And Mr. McConnell has privately expressed uncertainty that Mr. Trump will be able to salvage his administration after a series of crises. What was an easygoing governing alliance has curled into a feud of mutual resentment and sometimes outright hostility, complicated by the position of Mr. McConnell's wife, Elaine L. Chao, in Mr. Trump's cabinet, according to more than a dozen people briefed on the imperiled partnership. Angry phone calls and private bad-mouthing have devolved into open conflict, with the president threatening to oppose Republican senators who cross him, and McConnell mobilizing to their defense. The rupture between Mr. Trump and Mr. McConnell comes at a highly perilous moment for Republicans who face a number of urgent deadlines when they return to Washington next month. Congress must approve new spending measures and raise the sanctuary limit on government borrowing within weeks of reconvening, and Republicans are hoping to push through an elaborate rewrite for the federal tax code. There isn't scant room for legislative error on any front. A protracted government shutdown for a default on sovereign debt could be disastrous for the economy and the party that controls the White House and both chambers of Congress. Yet Mr. Trump and Mr. McConnell are locked in a political Cold War. Neither man would comment for this article. Don Stewart, a spokesman for Mr. McConnell, noted that the senator and the president had, quote, shared goals, end quote, and pointed to, quote, tax reform, infrastructure, funding the government, not defaulting on debt, passing the defense authorization bill, end quote. Still, the back and forth has been dramatic. In a series of tweets this month, Mr. Trump criticized McConnell publicly and berated him in a phone call that quickly devolved into a profane shouting match. During the call, which Mr. Trump incited on August 9th from his New Jersey golf club, the president accused Mr. McConnell of bungling the health care issue. He was even more animated about what he intimated was the Senate leader's refusal to protect him from investigations of Russian interference in the 2016 election, according to Republicans briefed on the conversation. Mr. McConnell has fumed over Mr. Trump's regular threats against fellow Republicans and criticism of Senate rules, and questioned Mr. Trump's understanding of the presidency in a public speech. McConnell has sharper comments in private, describing Trump as entirely unwilling to learn the basics of governing. In offhand remarks, Mr. McConnell has expressed a sense of bewilderment about where Mr. Trump's presidency may be headed, and has mused about whether Mr. Trump will be in a position to lead the Republican Party into next year's elections and beyond, according to the people who have spoken to him directly. While maintaining a pose on public reserve, Mr. McConnell expressed horror to advisers last week after Mr. Trump's comments equating white supremacists Charlottesville, Virginia, with protests who rallied against them. Mr. McConnell's most explosive remarks came at a news conference in Manhattan, where he stood beside Miss Child, the Transportation Secretary. Miss Child, deflecting a question about the tensions between her husband and the president she serves, told reporters, quote, "I stand by my man, both of them," end quote. Mr. McConnell signaled to business leaders that he was deeply uncomfortable with Mr. Trump's comments. Several who resigned advisory roles in the Trump administration contacted Mr. McConnell's office after the fact and were told that Mr. McConnell fully understood their choices. 3 people briefed on conversations said Mr. Trump also continued to badger and threaten Mr. McConnell's Senate colleagues, including Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona. Those Republican primary challenger was praised by Mr. Trump last week. Here's the tweet where he tweeted out, Mr. Trump tweeted out, "Great to see Dr. Kelly Ward is running against Jeff Flake. Flake, who is weak on borders, crime, and a non-factor in Senate. He's toxic." And then it goes on to say, at a campaign rally in Phoenix on Thursday, Mr. Trump alluded Mr. Flake unfavorably, referring to him as, quote, "weak on borders," and, quote, "weak on crime," end quote, without mentioning him by name. He referred to Mr. McConnell only in passing, calling him to abolish the Senate filibuster. Senior Republican officials said
1 year ago, Eric
before the rally that they stood up for Mr. Flake against any attacks. A Republican, quote, super PAC, unquote, allied with Mr. McConnell released a web ad on Tuesday assailing Mrs. Ward as a fringe-dwelling conspiracy theorist. When it comes to the Senate, there's an Article 5 understanding. An attack against one is an attack against all, end quote, said Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, who found himself in Mr. Trump's sights many times, invoking the NATO alliance mutual defense doctrine. The fury among Senate Republicans towards Mr. Trump has been building since last month, even before he lashed out at Mr. McConnell. Some of the blame the president for not being able to rally the party around any version of legislation to repeal the Affordable Care Act, accusing him of not knowing even the basics about the policy. Senate Republicans also say strong-arm tactics from the White House backfired, making it harder to cobble together votes and have left bad feelings in the caucus. When Mr. Trump addressed a Boy Scout jamboree last month in West Virginia, White House aides told Senator Shelby Moore Capito, a Republican from the state whose support was in doubt, that she could not accompany him on Air Force One if she committed to voting for the health care bill. She declined the invitation, noting that she could not commit to voting for a measure she had not seen, according to a Republican briefed on the conversation. Boy, you see how things change right there after Obama goes out of office and Trump comes in. I mean, they wouldn't read the Obama health care bill. They went ahead and signed it so they could read it. You see how things change, folks? I'm going to play this ad for y'all right here.
Arizona Republicans rejected chemtrail Kelly Ward. Remember why? Ward wasted your tax dollars for a town hall on chemtrail conspiracy theories. And sponsoring chemtrail legislation?
I'm open. I introduce legislation for constituents all the time.
About another chemtrail town hall?
I'd do it again. Of course I would do it again.
Chemtrail Kelly's got her head in the clouds with crazy ideas. She bizarrely blamed John McCain for ISIS.
John McCain is directly responsible for the rise of ISIS.
Yet dangerously calls for restraint in fighting them.
What is your response to ISIS?
Restraint and realism.
Now, after losing big league to John McCain, Chemtrail Kelly says he should resign so she can be senator.
Step away as quickly as possible.
I should be at the top of the list for appointment to that Senate seat.
Embarrassing behavior, dangerous ideas. No wonder Republicans rejected her just 1 year ago. Chemtrail Kelly, not conservative, just crazy ideas.
But here you see from hotair.com, yeesh, McConnell's approval in Kentucky down to 18%. %, say that they will more likely vote for someone else. Oh no, I'm sorry. That 14% of them voted for someone else in the presidential election. 'I don't know, I can't make much sense of that little graph there. But according to this article, his approval rating is down to 18%. Breitbart say that it's at 19%. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, has a 19% approval rating according to New Harvard Harris poll, the lowest of any elected U.S. official with a national profile. So that's always good to hear, especially after receiving such an email from one of our country's lawmakers who should have been on the Republican side of things, which I guess he is when you think about it. And here's some more articles. Republicans lost faith in Congress faster than Trump. new poll for Republicans and Republican-leaning voters posted on Twitter by Tony Fabrizio, Trump's pollster during the 2016 presidential campaign, reveals that they are losing faith in Congress faster than they are in Trump. One potential factor, the Republican-controlled Senate fell a vote shy in late July of passing a bill that would have repealed elements of the Affordable Care Act. Republicans have promised for years to repeal the Affordable Care Act if given control. Here you see, now this is pretty easy to read. Here you see Trump's approval rating starting at 81% and has went down to 72%. As his disapproval has went up. Right here you can see both of these adds up to 100%, excuse me. Okay. As does this, and you can definitely see a steeper line. Hold on. Is that any better? Over here is Trump's approval rating from June to August. It's at 81%, going down to 75%. His disapproval rating at 19%, it goes up to 25%. And over here you have the GOP Congress approval rating starting in June at 68%. And from June to August, you can see here the steep decline line. It has fallen to 54%. And in June, their disapproval rating began at 32% and has now reached 46%.
You're listening to the Alex Morgan Show on Freedom Internet Radio, so pro First and Second Amendment. The sound melts snowflakes on contact.
Right here, I wanted y'all to take a look at Newsmax.com. Physical court looming. White House insists Trump working well with McConnell and Ryan. Here you see the Trump presidency report. Kelly's team will vet everything before Trump. And it had a list going on. We might check that out a little bit later. I don't know. President Donald Trump picked a new fight on Thursday with his fellow Republicans, saying congressional leaders could have avoided a, quote, mess, unquote, over raising the U.S. debt ceiling if they had taken his advice. In the latest in a stream of criticism that could undermine his aims to cut taxes, pass a budget, and rebuild an infrastructure, Trump sought to blame party leaders if Congress fails to agree to raise the cap on how much the federal government can borrow. The Treasury Department has said the ceiling must be raised by September 29th. If not, the government would be unable to borrow more money or pay its bills, including its debt payments. That could hurt the United States' credit rating, cause the financial turmoil, harm the U.S. economy, and probably trigger a recession. Trump said he has advised Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House of Representatives Speaker Paul Ryan to link passage of legislation raising the debt ceiling to a bill on Veterans Affairs that he signed into law on August 12th. Quote, they didn't do it, so now we have a big deal with Dems holding them up, as usual, on debt ceiling approval. Could have been so easy, now a mess, end quote, Trump said in a Twitter post. Recent media reports suggest that Trump's relationship with McConnell have deteriorated amid repeated attacks by Trump on the Republican Senate Majority Leader for, among other things, failing to get a health care bill passed. The New York Times reported on Tuesday that McConnell and Trump were locked in a political, quote, Cold War, end quote, especially after the August 9th phone call that devolved into a shouting match. On the 9th and the 10th, Trump assailed McConnell by Twitter, angered by a speech in which McConnell said Trump had, quote, excessive expectations of, end quote, of Congress. Right here, I want to hear exactly what he did say about the president, because I've not heard this. Trump's salvo ran counter to efforts this week by the White House and McConnell's office to play down reports of discord. A spokesman for McConnell noted that the Senate Majority Leader had said earlier this week, in appreciation with the Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, that the debt ceiling would be raised. McConnell was, quote, unethical, unquote, about it, said spokesman Don Stewart. He said McConnell mentioned it again on Wednesday in a statement the Senate Majority Leader issued about his, quote, share goals, end quote, with Trump. Ryan, speaking at a town hall meeting on a tax reform at a Boeing plant in Washington State, also said Congress would pass legislation to raise the ceiling in time to ensure debt payment. White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders denied there was any need to repair ties between Trump and top Republican lawmakers. Quote, I think the relationships are fine, end quote, she told reporters. Quote, certainly there are going to be some policy differences, but There are also a lot of shared goals, and that's what we're focused on, end quote. Deadline looms. Raising the debt ceiling is one of the most passed measures Congress will take up when it returns on September 5th. Congress will have about 12 working days from its return to approve spending measures to keep the government open while the budget and the debt cap are separate. They are likely to become entangled with Republican opponents of a debt ceiling increase expected to demand federal spending cuts. Trump threatened on Tuesday to shut down the government if Congress failed to secure funding for his long-promised wall along the U.S.-Mexican border. His threat added a new wrinkle to Republican What? A new wrinkle to the Republicans' months-long struggle to reach a budget deal, rattling markets and drawing rebukes from some Republicans. Democrats solidly opposed the funding. The wall have slammed Trump over his comments. Both the spending and debt ceiling bills could pass the Republican-led House by a simple majority vote, but will need 60 votes to pass the Senate, where Republicans hold 52 of 100 seats, meaning they will need some Democratic support. A respected think tank said in a report on Thursday the government might not have enough money to pay all its bills on October 2nd. If Washington does not raise the debt cap, the Treasury might not have enough money on that day to make roughly $80 billion payment that would be due to a military retirement fund, according to the Bipartisan Center. Moody's Investors Service said it would consider stripping the United States of its top-notch ranking in the event of a default, but not over late or skip payments on non-debt obligations if the government ran short of funds. The warning about a possible U.S. downgrade seemed less dire and narrower in a scope than one issue on Wednesday by Fitch Ratings. Trump has often expressed frustration that Congress has not passed significant legislation since he took office in January, particularly its failure to pass a bill to replace Democratic former President Barack Obama's health care law, something that Trump had promised to accomplish. Quote, the only problem I have with Mitch McConnell is that after hearing repeal and replace for 7 years, he failed. That should never have happened, Trump said in a tweet on Thursday, echoing criticisms he made earlier this month. McConnell offered muted criticism of Trump on Thursday, saying he was a, quote, little concerned about some of the trade rhetoric, quote, by the president, who has repeatedly condemned trade deals he believes are bad for the United States, and by others. Quote, trade is a winner for America, end quote, McConnell told Kentucky farmers and lawmakers. Quote, the assumption that every free trade agreement is a loser for America is truly untrue, unquote.
Our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before, and I think had excessive expectations about how quickly things happen in the democratic process.
Well, that comment has really set off a number of conservatives and particularly supporters of President Trump. And we're going to talk about it here in the next few minutes. Washington Times columnist Madison Gesiato is here. Former Bush 43 Special Assistant Ron Christie is here. And Caitlin Huey Burns from Real Clear Politics is also here. Why don't I go to you, Madison? Number one, I know you've been a big supporter of the president. And a lot of people who are like you say, boy, excessive expectations? Really? They're upset about this, right?
Right. It's absolutely ridiculous. We have to keep in mind why President Trump was elected. He was elected to drain the swamp, to change Washington. You know, this is not a game of life or Monopoly. This is the real world. There are real people out there every single day that are hurting because Congress is not, you know, making the changes that they need to make quickly enough. And so I think it's ridiculous and quite insulting to the American people.
There you go, Ron. So your Republican Party seems to be getting along quite well these days. What do you say?
Well, good afternoon, Connell. I agree 100% with what Madison said. You know, I just remember back to 1994 when we were campaigning to take the House majority. We said, we have a contract with America. Right. If you give us the first 100 days, we're going to pass these 10 very important bills. You mean to tell me after 7 years of making promises to the American people that the Senate Majority Leader can't get his act together and bring legislation to the floor? I think it's a disgrace. And I say that as a proud Republican, but they've had their time, and I think the American voters are going to be the ones that are...
There you go.
Who takes the blame for all of this? That's how we're setting ourselves up for the midterms next year. Who to blame?
Exactly. This is definitely...
Who you going to blame, folks? That's a good question right there. I'm glad we watched this little video. You voters have got a lot of thinking to do in the next year and a half or so. Maybe less than that. Probably about a year and 3 to 4 months, actually.
A blame game. And these two parties, you would say, Trump representing his own faction and the Republican Party represented by the majority leader, we're always kind of headed for this kind of collision course. You have a president now who campaigned on shaking up Washington, doing things very quickly, and he would often say easily. Then you have someone like Mitch McConnell who is an institutionalist,
Do you get the sense Republicans are ready to turn their back on the president? I mean, in Congress, a lot more of them.
Active defiance on behalf of Republican lawmakers of this president. You're also seeing a tension because they were always, this arranged marriage was always based on the agenda. Now that the agenda is in flux, you're seeing this blame game go on.
So there's a consequence to that, right, Madison? So they do that, and part of you says, okay, well, the president's approval ratings are quite low. They're somewhere in the 30s. Well, guess what? Congress is a lot lower than that. Mm-hmm. So maybe it is the congressional Republicans that have more to lose here or more at risk than this president because they're all up for re-election, or many of them are next year.
Right. I'll tell you right now that the minute congressional Republicans turn their backs on the president is the minute that the American people will turn their backs even more on congressional Republicans.
And where
that's exactly right.
If primaries, you mean?
Yes.
They'll all be primaried. Yeah.
I believe they will if they don't get their act together and get their act together very quickly. Like he said, we had 7 years to come up with something to either repeal Obamacare or to repeal and replace Obamacare, and they have absolutely nothing. We're a blank slate as we were 7 years ago.
I've spent a lot of time talking to Republican lawmakers and strategists, and you hear over and over again, after the health care bill failure, you heard this concern and anxiety and frustration from Republicans about that the president isn't doing enough to help make these negotiations happen. Someone that campaigned as kind of the deal maker wasn't able to close that deal. So there is a frustration that he didn't go out there and use the bully pulpit to the extent that he can, and that he hasn't really figured out a way yet to incentivize these lawmakers to
You must hear that too, Ron. I mean, you said, or seemed to kind of side with the president over the majority leader in your initial comments, but you must hear that, right, from people you know on Capitol Hill. I mean, what happens here?
Same thing that Caitlin said I'm hearing all the time. You have a lot of moderate members who are very upset that the president didn't come out and say, here are my principles for reform, give me a piece of legislation, but it has to have the following components. I think this is normal for a White House. Certainly our first 6 months in office, it was very difficult for President Bush. And
Bush 43,
how do you work for Bush? Yes, for Bush 43. How do you work with the Congress? And I think with a new experienced White House chief of staff and a better streamlined operation, I think this president and this White House will deliver, but they have to because these Republicans are running scared.
How? I mean, how does the math work on delivering? Does anybody want to weigh in on that? Because it's one thing to have a debate about whether or not we can get 60 votes in the Senate for something that one party supports, but now getting to 50, especially if this is the type of rhetoric you have between a majority leader and a president, how do you get there?
Well, a couple different reasons this is happening. You only have two really vulnerable Republicans up for re-election next year, and so there isn't that pressure. And I've also talked to Republicans who say we aren't putting enough pressure on the Democrats who are in these tough races next year. You see no Democrats cross over the aisle for major pieces of legislation, which is also really telling. They're saying that they have no political incentive to work with this president, which means that there is, little margin of error.
No, you're right, and that's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later, because when you look at the numbers, it's not a foregone conclusion that the Republicans suddenly lose the Senate or even the House, even if they're politically unpopular, and it's really about math. What about from the president's point of view, Madison? How do you think he handles this? Obviously, he has other things to deal with right now. At the top of the list got to be North Korea. So how do you deal with congressional Republicans that don't seem to be in lockstep with what you're dealing with, and you have this other much larger than distraction that's also on your table?
Right. President Trump has many serious issues to deal with, but what I think is very disappointing for the White House is that these congressmen feel that they need to be incentivized to do what the people want. These people are hurting. These people need reform on both sides of the aisle. This shouldn't be something that's just for Republicans or just for Democrats. Everybody needs help, especially in places like the Midwest, where I'm from. And so for them to come forward and say, oh, well, the president hasn't done enough to push us. No, they should be doing this regardless.
The White House is pushing back more, or seems more worked up about their own quote-unquote colleagues, right, than the Democrats sometimes, at least over the last week or so. Do you find that strange? Or?
No, I mean, I understand their frustration completely, but I think there should be frustration on both sides coming from the people across this country that have been hurt by this, disastrous Obamacare.
What about you, Ron? That idea, this infighting, it can't be healthy 100% for the party, right? I mean,
it's terrible. It's destructive. A lot of the members of Congress that I've been speaking with in the last couple of weeks say that we need to get our collective act together. If we're going to fight, if we're going to sit in the circular firing squad, why should the American people give us the trust and give us the opportunity to lead? And one other thing I would add is that...
What's the answer to that, by the way?
Well, the answer to that is Donald Trump is our president. He's a Republican, and Republicans need to find a way to deliver on the promises that they made, to work with this president, to put legislation on his desk, and find a way to get those things signed.
Okay, that's a key point. Donald Trump is our president. Ron speaking as a Republican. He's worked for Republicans many times in the past. I wonder if that's part of it, that many of these, I don't know, I'm not going to speak for Mitch McConnell, but that many of these Republicans you find out when you speak to don't see this president as certainly a traditional Republican or one of them, right?
Right. I mean, we know that a few members of Congress supported this president actively and kind of came around to it at the end.
Yeah, because he's going to win or he's going to be nominated.
Exactly, and they had an agenda binding them together. I think, I've had conversations with Republicans inside and outside of Washington, and you definitely see this contrast between state party chairs, for example, who are very supportive of this president and think that he is helping them cultivate candidates. I think when you look at races in 2018, there's going to be a difference between how incumbent Republicans, and how challengers to Democrats run. Talk to some of these challengers who are running right side by side with Donald Trump, thinking that will be kind of using that pox on both your houses, let's change up Washington. So I think that dynamic will be interesting.
Think they keep the House? They keep control, by the way? I mean,
I think it's difficult. It's an uphill battle for Democrats to take the House, just given how these lines are drawn. Yep. And just because you're a Republican who doesn't like Trump does not necessarily mean you're going to flip for a Democrat.
Like I said, we're going to talk about it later. What do you think, Madison? Keep the House?
I think they will keep the House, and I think that'll be a result of the changes we're seeing in the state level. Places, like I said, where I'm from, Ohio, we have a new state chair, Jane Temkin. She's doing an amazing job working with the president and hopefully putting out
West
candidates.
Virginia governor changing parties, things like that. Ron, that's the final word then on keeping the House and the Senate. Are you confident in the Republicans?
Very confident. I think we keep the House handily, and I think we even actually pick up 5 seats in the Senate.
That's interesting. It just shows you conventional wisdom's not always right on these things when you start running the math. Well, like I said, we're going to talk more about it later. But thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All three of you.
Let's move it on along. Got about 12 minutes left. About 12 minutes left on my Blog Talk Radio link, that is. We actually had a Muslim come on the with Chad on Spreaker a while ago and post all of his information, all of his shows, which I deleted, which I went off on. And if anybody sees what I wrote, I mean, I apologize. I mean, no offense to you. You're welcome to get on my channel and chat all you want. But let's get to this article while I have very little time. Pathetic liberals are now claiming Dolly Parton is, quote, racist. The main objective for liberals right now is eliminating anything and everyone surrounding the Civil War. They've also lashed out at George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Christopher Columbus, but hey, they're on a rampage. History and facts really don't matter at this point. All this madness, they've somehow lumped Dolly Parton as a Slate magazine just wrote an article demanding her Civil War themed dinner theater should be shut down or torn down or torched. Regardless, they want the restaurant gone because it's racist. From Chicks on the Rights. At Dolly Parton, here's the tweet from Slate. At Dolly Parton Civil War themed dinner theater, there's violence on many sides. And they have a link there. Anyways, there is some of what she wrote. It is a lily white Knish extravaganza that play acts the Civil War, but never once mentions slavery. Instead, it romances the Old South with generous positions of both corn on the cob and Southern belles festooned in Christmas lights. At its sister staging in Branson, Missouri, the original is up the road from Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, but it's put on a venue that can only be described as resembling a plantation mansion. Also, everyone in the audience must pick a side. Then she goes on to talk about how her family escaped the outright racism of the South and how much she hates, but that she has to watch the show twice, once from each side for both journalism. Wow, so brave. While the show makes zero mention of slavery, that's not to say there were no reference to the Civil War. The war was alluded to both in an overarching North versus South concept and through details both subtle. The gray and blue schemes on each side, the blanched, the racing piglets were named after Abraham Lincoln, USS Grant, Robert E. Lee, and Scarlett O'Hara. Dolly says that the show is about bringing back, quote, those good old times, end quote, referring to her childhood, but of course she wasn't around during the days of Grant and Lee. A piglet named Robert E. Lee, can you imagine how horrible? OMG triggered. Then she talked about how much she hates the South again and how she was so brave for playing the games or something. If I was hesitant to cheer and otherwise engage in audience participation when sitting in the North section, I absolutely refused to do so when sitting in the South. I even complicated hijacking the flag relay so that our side could win. But then I remembered I was one black person among hundreds of white people in a place called, quote, Dixie Stampede, end quote, in 2017, and I emotionlessly passed the flag without a fuss. Then she talked to people just to prove how racist they all were. As the crowd began to disperse, I chatted up the white couples next to me. They happened to be from Staten Island in my hometown of New York City. I look to be in their late 20s or early 30s. They were fans of Dolly. I asked, what do you think of the fact that in the show they claimed they were all winners and there's no South and North, considering everything that's happened in the news lately? The guy leaned in slightly with a gleam in his eye and said, "Look, it's all BS," end quote. He said, quote, "But that's the way it is down here," end quote. If this show were being performed in New York, he said, he'd think it was weird. He then proceeded to tell me he didn't vote in the last election. Trump sucks. He said, quote, "Trump sucks, Hillary sucks, and I knew Hillary was going to win in my state, so it didn't matter," end quote. And bemoaned how we're all ignoring the, quote, "real problem," end quote, religion, and are afraid to call other cultures out for the terrorist attacks that are happening all around the world. But that article is up on conservativefighters.com if you all want to go check that out. Got about 4 minutes left. I want to get on to this article right here. I got about 4 minutes on Blog Talk, by the way.
Broadcasting on Freedom Internet Radio is paid for by viewers like you. Without your support, we couldn't exist. Freedom isn't free, that's why it's so important to support this broadcast and others like it. The mainstream media committed political suicide over the past 24 months. Let's bankrupt the vomit brokers and support free market capitalism. Remember, we don't push socialism. We support freedom and liberty worldwide.
You can go over to alexmorganshow.com to donate. You can go to gofundme.com/alexmorganshow. Whatever what you want to do, just please help our cause. Please ensure the survival of this broadcast. You can also go over to alexmorganshow.com, buy yourself a t-shirt, buy your lady a nice bag, buy anything. You don't have to wear it. Give it to the homeless. I don't care. Just that would be two good deeds right there. With you be killing two birds with one stone. Okay. NYC Mayor Bill de Blasio may take down Christopher Columbus statue. This report comes from CBSNews.com. Written May 24, 2017. New York Mayor Bill de Blasio may order the removal of the statue of Christopher Columbus in Manhattan's Columbus Circle. The statue, which is over 100 years old, is one of the city's artifacts currently under review in an effort to remove, quote, "symbols of hate," unquote. How is Christopher Columbus a symbol of hate? Can you tell me? De Blasio, a Democrat who is running for re-election this November, ordered the review after the violent confrontations between white supremacists and counter-protest in Virginia early this month. I digress, but hold on. There's something I wanted to share with y'all.
"90 seconds.
Blasio said the statue would be subject to review. Quote, "We have to look at everything here," end quote, de Blasio said during Wednesday night's Democratic mayor debate. City Council Speaker
60
Melissa
seconds.
Mark Venero, an ally of de Blasio and fellow Democrat, has called for the statue of Columbus to come down. But what I wanted to share was that the assailant who ran over the people at the protest in Charlottesville a week or so ago is connected to the Obama campaign and the Clinton campaign. That's a little detail that the mainstream media may have not
10 seconds.
informed you of. If anybody wants to keep listening to the show, go over to alexmorganshow.com. Go over to Spreaker.com/user/Big Al Morgan. You can listen to it there. Good night, folks. I love y'all, and I'll see you soon. I'm still here for all you Spreakers.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Goodbye. I'll get back to this article right here. Quote, "I will wait for the commission."
I thought it was Virginia or somewhere.
That's what,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Hold on.
Virginia. Yeah, he and again, right now he's just accused, but there was video of him running his car into the crowd. And,
Running his car into a crowd of people?
Right. Yeah.
Did it hurt anybody?
Yeah, there's one fatality, and let's say 24 people have been injured. Sorry.
Give me just a moment. Quote, "I will wait for the commission. As I said, Christopher Columbus is a controversial figure to many of us, particularly in the Caribbean, and I think that has to be looked at. When you have to look at history, we have to look at it thoroughly and clearly," quote, she said on Monday. The Italian-born Columbus was one of the first Europeans to reach the Americas, and his expeditions initiated the first lasting transatlantic contracts. Critics note the dual treatment of native peoples and his active participation in the slave trade. The statue was given to the city by a group of Italian Americans in 1892. The NYPD Columbia Association, which includes thousands of Italian American police officers, is one of the groups fighting to keep the statue on public grounds. De Blasio, presumptive Republicans' opponent in the mayoral contest, also says the statue should stay put. Quote, "Even Christopher Columbus, the founder of our nation, is under attack," end quote, said Assemblywoman Nicole Malakatis said Wednesday. I hope I didn't butcher that, by the way. She later clarified that she misspoke in calling Christopher Columbus the founder of the U.S. But, yeah, I don't mean to digress and get on and off. So let's watch this video of the assailant who was driving the car who ran over the people in Charlottesville. Okay, suspect told his mother he was going to rally. Video by Associated Press.
My name's Samantha Bloom. I'm his mother.
Very good. I'm so sorry. This is a terrible way for you to do this.
You haven't been notified at all about this?
No.
Wow. So this is the first you're learning of it.
I'm so sorry. Was there any indication that this might be kind of where he was going?
I just knew he was going to a rally. I mean, you know, I try to stay out of his political views. We don't, I don't really get too involved. I moved him out to his own apartment, so I'm watching this cat.
The human heart beats great.
Like I said, I don't really talk to him about his, political views. I mean, so I don't really understand or what the rally was about or anything. So.
Okay.
I just know there isn't. He did mention what is Albright? What is it?
Alt-right?
Albright.
No, alt-right. It's like alternative right. It's ultra-conservative white supremacist organization.
I didn't know it was white supremacists. I thought it had something to do with Trump. Trump's not a supremacist. I mean, he had an African American friend. I mean, so.
Yeah.
Is this surprising to you then, I guess? That he would run his car into a group of people for. I'm really not clear on.
There you see him again trying to link Trump to the alt-right. Let's read this article. James Alex Fields Jr. of Ohio was charged with second-degree murder in Charlottesville, Virginia on Saturday after the authorities said he drove a car into a crowd, leaving a 32-year-old woman dead and injuring at least 19 people who were protesting the rally staged by white supremacists. Background: Mr. Fields, 20, was born in Kenton, Kentucky, to Samantha Lee Bloom. He was living with his mother until, quote, 5 or 6 months ago, end quote, when he moved to his own apartment in Maumee, Ohio. Maumee, ever how you say that? Maumee. According to an interview with Mrs. Bloom gave to the Toledo Blade, they moved to Ohio from Kentucky about a year ago because of her job, she said. Mr. Fields' father died before he was born, and Aunt Pam Fields said in an interview on Sunday Mrs. Fields said she had not seen her nephew, whom she remembered as a, quote, very quiet little boy, unquote, more than 5 times in the past 10 years. A friend and former neighbor of Mrs. Bloom's in the condominium complex where she lived until last year remembered her son as a quiet teenager who, quote, kept to himself a lot, end quote. Quote, he had some trouble in school making friends, end quote, said the friend who requested anonymity because she said she fears for her safety. Quote, she had struggled with him during his teenage years, but he came around towards the end of school, quote, she said, adding, quote, she was always trying to do the best for her son, end quote. An interview with the Associated Press, Mrs. Bloom said she knew her son was going to a rally, but that she tried to, quote, stay out of his political views, unquote. She said that she thought the rally, quote, had something to do with Trump, unquote, adding, Trump is not a supremacist. Derek Weimer, 45, told the Cincinnati Enquirer that Mr. Fields was one of the students when he taught history at Randall K. Cooper High School. He describes Mr. Fields as, quote, a very bright kid, but very misguided and very disillusioned, unquote. Mr. Fields was a freshman. He wrote a report for another class that was, quote, very much along the party lines of the neo-Nazi movement, unquote. Mr. Weimer said, quote, a lot of boys get interested in the Germans and Nazis because they're interested in World War II, but James took it to another level, unquote, he said. Military records show that Mr. Fields entered the Army on August 18, 2015, around the time his mother wrote on Facebook that he had left for boot camp. Less than 4 months later, on December 11th, his period of active duty concluded. It was not immediately clear why he left the military. This doesn't say anything about what I was telling y'all, though. Is the accused Charlottesville killer an anti-Trump leftist supported by Clinton, Soros? Various right-leaning sources immediately and inaccurately identified the driver of the vehicle that plowed through the crowd of counter-protest in Charlottesville, quote, a radical leftist, unquote. Days after a 12th August 2017 neo-Nazi rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, in which a white supremacist mowed down a group of counter-protesters with a car, killing one and injuring dozens. Various right-leaning websites published reports claiming the driver was actually a left-wing Hillary Clinton supporting Democrat. We do not yet know very much about 20-year-old James Alex Fields of Maumee, Ohio, but since evidence as we have places him squarely in the camp of Charlottesville protesters who marched under the white supremacist banner. One of Fields' former high school teachers, Derek Weimer, told the Cincinnati Enquirer the young man's political views was extreme and favored with Nazism. But
State of emergency has been declared in Virginia. Now, if you go back to the WikiLeaks from over a year ago, the Democratic Party is sending emails to George Soros and back and forth at the highest levels of the Democratic Party saying, we're losing the public. Minorities are getting into free market. We want to keep people in their mother's basements as baristas. Remember, Hillary even said that. What are we going to do to keep control of them, keep them in the dark, keep them desperate? These are quotes. Hundreds and hundreds of emails. We've covered them, written articles about it, linking to them. They didn't deny that they were real. They're real. They said, what do? They said, we go to culture war. We use demographics. So America is one of the most open, free countries in the world. But they use the problems we've had to over-demonize it and then inflict psychologically the wounds on modern generations to bully them into a political agenda, but to also put chips on the shoulders of the so-called minority.
they even say right here that the claim that Alex Jones made about Hillary saying that Bernie supporters were basement dwellers was inaccurate. That's a load of bull. I remember her saying that myself.
Some are new to politics completely. They're children of the Great Recession, and they are living in their parents' basement. They feel that they got their education, and the jobs that are available to them are not at all what they envisioned for themselves, and they don't see much of a future. I met with a group of young black millennials today, and one of the young women said, none of us feel like we have a job that we should have gotten out of college. And we don't believe that the job market is going to give us much of a chance. So that is a mindset that is really affecting their politics. And so if you're feeling that you're consigned to, being a barista or, some other job that doesn't pay a lot and doesn't have much of a ladder of opportunity attached to it, then the idea that maybe, just maybe, you could be part of a political revolution is pretty appealing. So I think we all should be really understanding of that, and we should try to do the best we can, not to be, a wet blanket on idealism. You want people to be idealistic, you want them to set big goals, but to take what we can achieve now and try to present them as bigger goals. I mean, getting our country to 100% universal coverage is a big deal. Getting that Affordable Care Act to work better for people, getting the costs down so that people feel that they can afford the care that they now have access to. That's a big deal. Going after infrastructure, manufacturing, combating climate change by setting some big goals like 500 million new solar panels by the end of my first term and enough clean power to power every home in America by the end of my second term, that's a big goal. So what we have to do, and what I'm trying to do, is to make the case that we've got ideals, we've got big goals, but we also believe that the path to progress is one that you just have to get up every day and work on. You have to make it your life's work if you do this full time. You have to make it part of your civic.
Again, folks, I watch Alex Jones a lot. You know, I wouldn't say I watch it every day, but you can see how just inaccurate all these news reports are if you do any digging at all. It doesn't take very much digging until you realize who the real deceptors are, the ones really it doesn't take much, I'm telling you. Folks, I've got about 45 minutes left here in this 3-hour broadcast, but I'm going to cut it a little bit short. I'll come back tomorrow or later on this morning or sometime, and I'm going to go over the rest of these articles with y'all, folks. I love y'all. Please support the broadcast. Do everything you can to
Broadcasting on Freedom Internet Radio is paid for by viewers like you. Without your support, we couldn't exist. Freedom isn't free. That's why it's so important to support this broadcast and others like it. The mainstream media committed political suicide over the past 24 months. Let's bankrupt the vomit brokers and support free market capitalism. Remember, we don't push socialism. We support freedom and liberty worldwide. Visit alexmorganshow.com to shop for gear and donate to the broadcast.
Thank you all for listening. Please keep me in your thoughts and prayers, and I will do the same for you and your family. Thanks for listening. I love y'all. Peace. And see y'all next time.